All right, the blue button's up. I'm about to push it, but you're not live yet. Hold. Wait till you see the whites of their eyes. And you're live.
Hello there. Look at that, it's like magic, I just appeared. Hi, I'm David Green. I am the author of In Solitude's Shadow, which I'm going to read for you today. It is a epic dark fantasy series coming from Erie River Publishing. It's out on June the 4th. It is not out yet, so you're getting an exclusive read of the second chapter of the book. And so I keep disappearing into the background, but it's a beautiful cover, so I wanted to show it off. So yes, you are going to get the second chapter of the book. There's no big spoilers for the story beforehand, because of the way that the story is set. But it's an epic dark fantasy. It's very character driven, and I'm really hopeful that people are going to enjoy it, because people that have read it in terms of beta readers seem to really enjoy it. So unless they're all lying to me, which is possible, but you can be the judge of it, because I'm going to read you the second chapter. So you can pre-order it at the moment. You can actually go to Artists Alley on the QuaronCon2020.com website. There's loads of stuff on there from all the other people that have been taking part in this fantastic virtual convention from the last few days. And I'm on there too, so please check it out if you like what you hear. Obviously it's in other places too. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. So the series is the first of a trilogy. It's called The Empire of Ruin, Book 1, In Solitude's Shadow, which someone told me recently was like, that's the perfect title for the kind of world that we're living in at the moment, with the last year that we've had with everyone, staying in their homes and what have you. And it was written in that time, and the actual, there is a place called Solitude in the world of the book, which is called Houtveldt. But also solitude as in people being alone, and feelings of being separated from other people is one of the major themes of the book. And one of the other major themes is the relationship between the main. There's a three protagonists that have equal kind of page time, but one of the main relationships is between a daughter and a mother, and that really kind of drives the story onwards and is the kind of emotional core of the story. And this is, so she's on the front cover, she is Colleen Alpenwood, and this is her first chapter in the book that we're going to read from. So this is chapter. If anyone has any questions or anything like that, or any comments, the live chat is open, and after I finish reading, if I've got time, I will, respond to them. But I hope you enjoy this. So this is chapter 2 of In Solitude's Shadow, A Long Way from Home. A nobleman from Spring Haven ain't happy till he's searched every cupboard in an honest man's house and taken everything he fancies. Then he'll burn that man's house down with minute. A Colton trader's view on those from Houtveldt's capital. Look, Colleen said, thrusting her finger at the rat-faced innkeeper. I'm caked in filth. I fought Drockin elves all day yesterday so you could go on about your life, happy and oblivious to the horrors of war, and I've been travelling for hours through the forest of Drockin mists. Did I mention my head's pounding? I think my brain's about to escape my skull. I'm bone tired. Can I at least get changed before you give me more problems for race's sake? The innkeeper shook his head, folding his thin arms across his chest. Rules are rules. Free board for sparkers, as long as they serve a citizen's need. So says the Council of Sparkers and the Conclave. And I don't appreciate you taking one of the gods' names in vain. Colleen ground her teeth. She glanced over her shoulder. Vettigan, her companion and fellow Sparker, shrugged and sat by the fire. Despite the occasional difference in opinion, the old man remained her closest ally. Thanks for the help, Colleen thought, directing the words into Vettigan's mind with their link. Sparkers with a deep connection could connect that way, no matter the distance. It needed a high degree of trust and the courage to be vulnerable and let someone in. Other than Vettigan, Colleen had established a link with one other person, her mother. She pushed that thought away. You've got this under control, Vettigan said back. You're younger than me. I require immediate warmth. He winked as he sank further into his cushioned chair, then closed his eyes and appeared to fall asleep. Colleen turned back to the innkeeper of the Stubborn Mule, the only tavern in the whole of Sikh village, and wondered if they'd named the place after him. Maybe he thought he had to live up to the title for appearance's sake. She stared into his pale blue eyes and forced a smile. The innkeeper flinched. She suppressed the urge to roll her eyes. Why do folk Drocken react like that? Race, give me strength. It's because your grin resembles a lioness bearing her teeth Vertigan protected, and the folk of the Coton Duchy remember all too well the pain of Halfelt absorbing them. They don't like us. Drock off, Colleen replied, blocking the link and taking a deep breath. What's your name, friend? She asked the innkeeper. Manon, he replied, his voice a nasal whine. Never trust a Finn innkeeper, Colleen thought. Manon, she said, spreading her hands, your little problem in the cellar ain't going anywhere, is it? Let me and my partner over there get settled, stuff from some food and drink in our bellies. I promise we'll look at the basement tonight. Us Sparkers need to recharge our magic. We'd be useless without a little nourishment, savvy. That wasn't true. Sparkers could burn out if they exceeded their limits, but so long as they were mindful and had external edges to pull from, the magic flowed. The innkeeper wouldn't know that. The Order of Sparkers weren't ones to divulge their secrets. Fine, Manon said. Room, food, and 1 drink each. Then you go down to the basement. After that, you can drink and eat till morning for all I care. Great, Colleen said, extending her hand. Manon eyed it before taking it in a slack grip for less than a beat of his shriveled little heart, like he thought her fingers would spit venom. What's the problem down there, anyway? Weird noises, Manon replied, narrowing his eyes. Started a few days ago. We don't go down there. It floods, so I don't use it. Just a wild animal that's got itself trapped, then. Colleen took the key Manon offered. And my friend's room? You're sharing, Manon said, with a grin that exposed the gaps between his rotted teeth. All I can spare. Teeth of the gods, Colleen muttered, stalking over to Vertigan, snoring by the fire. She kicked his shins, and he woke with a start. Come on, she said, our chamber awaits. Sitting by the fire, in clean clothes and a cup of red wine in her hand, Colleen's mood had improved. Her stomach protested the lack of food, but she could deal with that a little while longer. Other patrons occupied surrounding seats and tables, but it wasn't busy. Most drank alone or made a mess with their food, while a rowdy game of dice played out in a far corner. Smoke hung in the air as men and women enjoyed their pipes. On a stage opposite the fire, a handsome red-haired man tuned a lute. Manon hurried him, no doubt eager for something to mask the occasional moan drifting up from the floor below. Every customer of the Stubborn Mule had stolen a glance at Colleen and Vertigan, in their bright orange spark robes, at least once. You wouldn't think a war rages 12 miles from here, Colleen muttered, throwing a dark glance around the inn. Vertigan stared into the flames, the memory of a smile on his lips. They made an odd pair, opposites in almost every way. She'd inherited her darker skin from her mother, but she'd cut her hair short, even shaved it on one side and dyed the rest blue to keep from seeing Zana in the mirror. Combined with sharp and wary eyes, she looked the part of a Sparker and a warrior through and through. Vertigan's curling silver hair fell about his face, tangled with his overgrown beard. The robes he wore were at least a size too large. His appearance meant other Sparkers often underestimated him. A mistake. His eyes held the wisdom of an extended life. Vertigan would turn 108 on his next name day, though he appeared no older than 60. A Sparker's fortune. Colleen had known him all her life, and he'd taken her under his wing after her mother's exile. They weren't master and apprentice, but allies. Colleen had the greater power and skill, Vertigan a vast well of knowledge. What does it matter to these simple folk, Vertigan replied, sweeping his gaze across the inn, laughing when the lute player strummed the jaunty first chords of A Maid Goes to Springhaven. The capital may as well be on another continent for all the patrons of the Stubborn Mule care. They're odd people in this part of the world, allied themselves with the elves for centuries. Remember the statue we happened by, towering into the sky? An elven figure, yet the humans here prayed to it like Sparkers petitioning Race or Jana. Not a lot of sparkers positioning them these days, Colleen said. Vertigan took a pull from his tankard, a faraway look in his eye. Maybe the elven gods walked the earth like ours once did, he said. Maybe they still would if we weren't killing them all. It makes you sad, doesn't it? Colleen muttered. The war. Many things sadden me, Colleen. Changes in Hautveld have gathered pace this last decade since Locke ascended the throne, and not many for the better. The rulers of Hautveld have battled elves for centuries, longer some say, murdered, enslaved or segregated them. They slaughter elven child they find with the spark. It's a gift, Colleen. To destroy it like that, it goes against the gods. It all goes against the gods, Colleen said. Vertigan let out a heavy sigh. They'll drive them to extinction or throw them into the slums to join the other slaves. And then what? Who will be left for the mighty empire to make war with? Hard to believe we all came from a single city. Every tree springs a seed, Colleen, but Springhaven proved a rotten one. After the elves, they'll find a new enemy ripe for conquest. Mark my words, Colleen. She patted his hand. She understood. The war with the elves seemed pointless to her. They'd spent the last 3 months on duty at the front, protecting soldiers and fighting wherever the laws of engagement permitted, the latest tour in a long line. Every time they were cycled out, she felt relief. Few shared the council and the Emperor of Hautveld's thirst for war, but what the council decreed, the Sparkers carried out. Since the Emperor had appointed his friend Bowles as High Sparker, the orders were executed without question. Race decreed that those with the spark should serve and, for the most part, the Magi did their duty. So peaceful here, so far from the city, Colleen murmured. Only the peace couldn't take root in her. Her thoughts drifted to her father, and when she forced them away, snarling, her mother's image appeared in her mind instead. Colleen wondered if she warmed herself by the fire in solitude, knitting in silence with the rest of the world so far away. She rejected that thought too, digging her fingernails into the palms of her hands until she felt pain, anger, not the inklings of longing. She deserves her banishment, Colleen told herself, biting her tongue for good measure. You should talk to her, Vertigan muttered, watching her over the rim of his ale. Even with their link blocked, he knew where her mind had strayed. No, she replied, looking away. I'm not having this conversation again. A decade has passed. You should forgive Zana. She acted on impulse and mother's instinct. Don't you think she suffered enough? The night flashed in Colleen's mind when her mother had eviscerated another living soul. Her father had taken a black path, became one of those sparkers who rejected Race's decree and believed sparkers should dominate. In the last 10 years, Colleen's nightmares had alternated between visions of what her father planned to do with her and his skin and bones withering and melting, forming an ooze that stained the floor of their home. There was always another way. She flicked a tear from her eye. What she did was unforgivable. She's lucky they only exiled her. Exile, pah! A farce, and you know it, Vertigan said. I'd have done the same in her shoes. I know, Colleen replied, and that's why I don't want to talk about it. They fell silent as Manon delivered a tray laden with cheese, bread stew and olives. Colleen's stomach rumbled with such fierceness the innkeeper did a double take. Colour rose in her cheeks as she tucked in, tearing off a chunk of bread to dip in her beef stew. Eat with haste, Manon said, placing a jug of water down on the table with a thump. I don't want whatever is in my cellar there any longer. Bad for business. Colleen rolled her eyes. Neither Sparker spoke as they shoveled food into their mouths. They'd spent vast amounts of energy protecting and fortifying Hautveld soldiers and warding off spells from the elven mages. They were fewer in number these days, but they didn't share the same limits as human Sparkers. The elves in the city, listless slaves severed from magic, seemed alien to their free brethren. The free elves fought for their lives. No laws of engagement, no decree of the gods, no council to regulate their magic, and they didn't pull their punches in battle. Colleen shuddered at the thought of the Sparkers who'd let their shields slip, their withered faces as they turned to mush lingering at the edges of her mind. For years the council, compelled by the various emperors of Hautveld, had exploited loopholes to force Sparkers into being more proactive in battle. Why give a sparker a sword when they could wield the elements? Colleen had seen war. She understood the push to relax or even abolish the laws. It would bring an end to the conflict sooner. Though she feared Vettigan's words were correct, the elven race would become nothing more than a sad memory, and Hauptveld would find a new enemy to obliterate. Getting thirsty, Vettigan grunted, showing Colleen his empty tankard. Aye, she replied, draining her wine. And even the drinking is just what's needed. Let's get this sorted. Man inserted the key into the brass lock and the dust exploded from the door frame as he barged it open with his shoulder. The hinges creaked from lack of use. When did you last hear the moans? Colleen coughed, wiping dust off her skin. You heard them as you drank, the innkeeper grunted, backing away from the cellar's entrance. They stop when the music plays. A spectre? Vettigan asked, drawing the flame from a nearby candle and holding it in his palm. Any deaths here of late? Nothing recent. Manning held a gaunt hand over his mouth and spoke through his fingers, like he feared the patrons upstairs would overhear. Are you saying my inn's haunted? Just discussing options, Colleen said, throwing Vettigan a baleful stare. He shrugged. Go see to your guest, innkeeper. Whatever it is, it won't keep us long. Just don't cause any mayhem, Manning said, eyeing the fire in Vettigan's palm. Most of this place is wood. The innkeeper slinked off, muttering to himself. Colleen thought she caught the words teeth and gods. Spectres? She asked, grinning at the other sparker. Did you have to tease him? You never know, Vettigan chuckled. Though more likely it's a dog swept in by the flooding. The jobs we do for a full belly. Maybe it's a mer person. They enjoy the water, Colleen winked. After you. Colleen stepped forward, Vettigan stepped forward, his fire illuminating the brick steps that descended into the cellar. The stink of damp rot filled Colleen's nostrils as she listened to her friend's footsteps echo around the winding stairs. The bard's music drifted from above, and Colleen reckoned they were below the stage area. Wait, Vettigan whispered. Goosebumps swept over Colleen's skin. Vettigan had opened his second sight, checking to make sure nothing magical dwelled in the cellar. Colleen's senses only picked up on it because they were so attuned to him. Vettigan wielded his abilities like a needle, where other sparkers beat away at their problems with a warhammer. In the gloom, she saw him turn her way and press a fingertip to his temple. Colleen unblocked their link. I sense a heartbeat, far side of the cellar. It's weak, no spark, definitely not a dog. A sensation itched in a separate corner of Colleen's mind, the part reserved for communication with her mother. Zana hadn't attempted to link with her for over 5 years. Colleen had made it clear then that she should never try again. Since, Colleen had trained her mind to keep the barriers blocking communication with her mother strong. She ignored the itch. The moaning tells me it's injured or dying, Colleen projected. I'll try talking first. She moved past Vettigan and stood at the edge of the firelight. Listening, she heard the slow drip of water against the stone floor and the shallow rattle of something close to its last breath. Hello? She called. We're here to help you. Heartbeat increasing, Vettigan projected. A soft moan answered, then turned into a hacking cough. Colleen pinpointed its origin. Come on, she said. She trotted across the abandoned cellar, heading towards the dripping water. Manning claimed he'd heard the cries start a few days before. The thing trapped in the basement had dragged itself next to the water, the only source of nourishment they could get. As Vettigan's fire illuminated the cellar's far side, Colleen stopped with a gasp. Racing the rotten teeth of the gods. A white-haired, pale man with yellow eyes lay on the floor, staring up at the ceiling as the bard's music continued to drift down. The figure wore fur clothing, with daggers of varying sizes tucked into a belt around his waist. A broadsword lay discarded on the floor. The smell of vomit, excrement and urine assaulted Colleen's nose and made her gag. She glanced at Vettigan, who covered his nose and mouth with his sleeve. One of the man's legs bent at an odd angle, and lacerations caked with dried blood covered his visible skin. How is he still alive? She muttered. Colleen took another step forward and crouched, drawing on her own energy to send a sliver of air magic, pushing away the stench. The man on the floor flopped his head to the side, staring at her with squinted eyes, as though the firelight hurt them. He didn't seem to have the strength to lift his hand and shield them. He's listening to the music, Vettigan said, drawing alongside Colleen, eyes wide. That's why the moans stop. The sounds comfort him. What is he? Colleen asked. She studied the stranger. She'd thought him pale before, but now she saw his skin to be white as chalk, as though it lacked pigment. He worked his mouth trying to speak. Colleen drew on the water from the cellar and cupped her hands. Liquid pooled between them. She held them out and nodded. The stranger opened his mouth and she trickled water between his grey lips. Colleen, Vertigan murmured, pointing at the broadsword. Look at the design on the crossguard. Does it look familiar to you? She tore her eyes away from the stranger and glanced at the weapon. A bronze emblem stood out at the centre of the crossguard, the image of a gigantic fortress, battlements behind it, and a sun high in the sky above the ramparts. Solitude, she whispered, from the far side. I remember visiting as a girl. Mother took me beyond the gates. Yes, Vertigan said. If I'm not mistaken, our pale friend is one of the banished. Council tells us to exterminate any this side of Solitude on sight. Not that we've ever had to, but that won't tell us how he appeared here. Look at his sword. He doesn't look like a simple shepherd, does he? Is as dark as Solitude, the banished croaked, the sound like old parchment tearing. The itch in Colleen's mind grew into an incessant pounding. Her mother wasn't giving up. She bit her lip. I'm not letting him die, she said. Shove the rules. I've killed too many in my life, but at least they were trying to kill me. He's helpless. I want to at least talk to this one first if I can. Vertigan nodded and got to his feet, holding the flame closer to the wall and running his hand over it. He pulled it away, showing Colleen the soot on his fingers. Look, he said. Burn marks on the wall. Days old, but no sign of fire anywhere else. Colleen looked into the banished eyes. Despite his weaponry, he appeared gentle. He smiled back at her. He lifted a trembling hand and pointed at the ceiling. Go Butte, he whispered. Then his hand flopped back to the floor. His eyes fell closed. Drop the rules, Colleen said. She opened her senses and drew on the energies she could reach. Fire, water, earth, the raw emotions of joy, frustration and contentment from upstairs. She pulled them all into herself, letting the exhilaration of life run through her. The stench from the wounded man thicker in her nose, her eyesight sharper, her heart beating with more strength and speed as her spark made her more. Colleen placed her hands on the banished forehead. Sorry, friend. This'll hurt. With a jolt, she flooded the dying man with the energy coursing through her body, a small bubble of reluctance rising in Colleen's stomach as she did. When she fed her spark, she often wanted to keep it all for herself, a sparker's curse. The injured man's eyes flew open, and his back arched as he let out a high-pitched scream. Colleen pulled her hands away and sat back panting. The banished slumped to the ground, eyes closed again. He's breathing, Vertigan murmured, picking up the sword and giving it a swing. Good blade, well balanced. If he's a farmer or a shepherd, I'm the Emperor's nanny. As Colleen opened her mouth to answer, the walls of her mind separating her from her mother crumbled. Like a burst dam unleashed, memories of times they'd shared, held behind the unblemished obsidian barriers blocking the link, flooded her mind. Colleen falling, grazing her knee, her mother's smiling face as she used the spark to heal it. Zana beaming with pride as Colleen produced flame for the first time. Staying up to watch the sunset as they spoke about the gods' ways and their magic. The soul-deep relief Colleen felt when she awoke on her father's slab, alive, to see Zana had rescued her. The crushing despair she felt when she saw the remains of the man, and her mother, tears staining her face, standing over him. Love, warmth, regret, pity, anger, self-loathing, pride. So many emotions, too many to process and name, washed through her brain. Colleen fell backwards, head smacking against the stone floor. Colleen, I'm sorry, but I had to reach you. The banished, they're at Solitude's gates. Thousands and more yet arriving. You must get word to the council, please. Colleen raised a shaking hand to her forehead as she pushed herself up. She stared at the sleeping banished she'd healed, stomach churning, vision spinning. Grunting, she exerted any will she could muster on the emotions swirling inside her. Steady, she focused on the link. Mother, she replied, feeling a wave of relief and gratitude flooding back along their connection. There's one line right in front of me, and I've just saved his life. The end of chapter 2. So I hope you enjoyed that. Sorry if I was stumbled over a few words, but it's the first time I've pretty much read that one. So I will just jump into the comments there for Anyone? Great background. Yep, there is indeed. Hi, Pam, Callum, Adrian, Matt, Beard on point. Thank you very much. So Adrian asks, really enjoyed the world building workshop yesterday. Loved the cover as well. Just curious, how much direction do you give the artist? Is it just a vague outline, or do you have a cover image in mind? Yeah, so we work with the publisher quite a lot on this one, and there's an artist that they hired for it, and we kind of talk about what it is that we wanted, what kind of theme that we had, and who we wanted on the cover, and then it kind of comes back, and the great thing is Michelle at Erie River has like very exacting standards, which is great. So there was a couple of times where I was kind of like, yeah, I like it a lot, and she's like, nope, I want to try this and this and this, and she pushed it back, and so we got like the cover that we have now, which is great. And then the cover for the second book is like a progression of this one, which I think is really, really good. Like, I love this one, and the second cover I love as well, but it's like you can see that it's the same series and it's the same, but you can see it's a progression, and you can see it's a darker second chapter by just looking at the cover. So yeah, very, very happy with it. MJ Reynolds says, really enjoyed the story, thanks. I think it's your best, writing is your best yet. Thanks very much. Jessica, I'll say hi Jess, really enjoyed that. Want to know what happens next? Thank you. Jed Wigger, nice, thank you Pam. MJ Reynolds, how long is the book, pages and chapters? It is just under 60,000, so it's kind of like a long novella, short novel, especially for fantasies standards, but that's part of the thing, is that we're looking to do the whole trilogy this year. So the first book is out on June the 4th, then we're going to do the second one will be coming out not too long after, like a few months after, and then hopefully the end one will be there. So that's that. So in terms of chapters, I think there is 14 chapters plus prologue and epilogue, and there's 3 point of view characters. Actually, there's kind of 4, but one of them is like only for one short chapter, and it's like a special kind of thing. And they, there's 3 point of view characters, and it kind of charts their journey. Each chapter is their own kind of point of view, so it doesn't change around too much in a chapter or anything, but like it's all about the same story. So Colleen is obviously one of them. Zana, her mother, is the other, and the other one is a chap called Cade Besson, who is like a normal, ordinary guy caught up in this whatever else is going on. Jess, do all your chapters end on cliffhangers? Yes, they do. In this book, they do. Yeah, they kind of. Maybe like each one, something happens that like there's a big thing that kind of propels the story to the next part at the end of each chapter. Not like a cliffhanger as such in all of them, but something that's like, I hope that's the idea anyway. I've got one more question to ask before we wrap up. Did the book grow from a single concept, or did you come to relatively complete? Single concept actually. I've been thinking about it for quite a while. The storyline, the main storyline for the first draft that was kind of accepted, was pretty much exactly as it is now, and it's just been developed further in terms of going deeper into the characters and deeper into the action and deeper into the intrigue of the world from the world building point of view. But the story itself was like, pretty much spot on as it was at the start. Third one already planned. Yeah, it is. The second one is completely planned. I'm writing that one now, and the third one, there's planned for that one as well. So yeah, it's not completely going to be made up or anything. But that's pretty much it. So that's me. So you can follow me on Twitter at Dave Greenwright, and thank you very much, David Greenwright. Thank you, and thank you very much for listening. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the QuaranCon. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, David. That was great.
Thank you.